Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, you are in the right place. Well, I hope it's the right place. You are in touch with interesting ideas. I'm Stan Houston. This is where we're trying to help you live and do better, work better. The person with the most good ideas and the person who can serve best will win in tennis and win in life. So that's a little bit of what we try and do. Hey, little story to begin with. I saw this incredible picture when I was doing some work in some of the Western world that I spend a lot of time in, which you'll hear about today. And I saw it was a picture interview of a very charming woman, probably in her late 50s, but she was sharp. She had a horse. She had all of her Western gear, and she was the ideal cowgirl. And unfortunately, at least the interviewer thought so, said, "Hey, you call yourself a cowboy. Don't you mean cowgirl?" And she had one of those classic lines, which my friend Stuart is going to be able to tell you all about. And that is, "Hey," she said, "cowboy is not a gender, it's a state of mind." Well, that's an interesting idea. Let's talk about that. The program begins right now. Well, Stuart, you were listening into that comment. Stuart Rosebrook, introduce yourself and then make a comment about the cowgirl who is a cowboy.
Oh, thank you very much, Stan. My name is Stuart Rosebrook. I am currently the editor of True West magazine. We are entering our 71st year as a publication. Born in 1953 in Austin, Texas, our founder, Joe Small, had a vision for a new publication called True West. And as we know, after World War II, the West and the Western exploded in tourism and international fanfare, with film and television flooding the new small screen and the silver screens around the world. And so you couldn't turn on a TV or open a newspaper or magazine or go to the movies and not experience a Western and watch and get excited about the cowboy. The cowboy was everywhere. And of course, we know in those early years after World War II, our heroes came back from the war, and people were tired of war. Sure, there were plenty of World War II movies being made, and later on in the 60s, we had some World War II television shows, but the Western took people back to when America was building itself with great promise, pride, and honor. And so the American cowboy became to symbolize after World War II that iconic American figure that at home and abroad would stand up against violence, against those who would oppress the underclass and work hard to make our world better, whether it was from their home farm and ranch or around the world. And so, as we know, for many, many times, as Americans have gone off to the world to represent the United States in the Olympics, many, many times, those Olympians walk into those foreign stadiums or home stadiums wearing a cowboy hat.
That is absolutely right. You are right.
And so when we talk about an icon, it's very interesting because the woman you were talking about, as she says, being a cowboy is the state of mind. It's not based on gender. And I think that's right. And I think that one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was about the state of mind about being a cowboy and those lessons boys and girls and men and women have learned over time and the moral code of the West and the Western and so many of those Westerns, Western movies, Westerns for children, but Westerns for all adults. The moral code which in many ways, if we love King Arthur and Robin Hood and the great tales of Europe that have a moral code, I think that we found our heroes and heroines astride a wonderful horse, trying to build a country in the frontier. Is it with controversy? Sure. There's many people who will say, well, the cowboy is this and the cowboy is that. But when it comes down to it, here in 2024, the cowboy in America is still a working man and woman who gets up 365 days a year and goes out and cares for the land, cares for their animals, and works hard to provide for their family. And those are values that were instilled in all of us who watched Westerns, who may have been growing up in big cities, but we were attracted to those values that represented the American dream.
That's incredible. That's right. I remember one person we were kind of talking about this, and he said this was a line he used. He's age and stage of me. He said, for 25 cents on Saturday, we went and saw a morality play, and we believed that everything that Hopalong Cassidy said was good. And then when Roy Rogers was on television, we wanted to be like Roy.
That's right. And growing up, I grew up in North Hollywood, California. And my parents had both been raised for much of their lives in Arizona. My mom was born in California. Her mom was born in Bakersfield, just a few years after the turn of the century. And her father was a mining engineer. So my mom's grandfather was a mining engineer. Her other grandfather was an immigrant who worked at Standard Oil. My dad was from the city. He was from New York. His father was an advertising executive. His mother was from the Bronx. But in the mid to late 1940s, my father was sent to Arizona as a 9-year-old out to a ranch school because of his asthma. At that time, there was only about 12 students on that ranch, which was up a 90-mile dirt road from Phoenix. And in every direction, the only way to get off that ranch was a dirt road, almost right in the middle of the state of Arizona. My mom's family moved from California down to Phoenix in 1948. Her friends and family in Northern California thought they were going to the frontier, the territory. They said that Arizona's barely a state. So growing up in Los Angeles, my life was the dichotomy of the imagined West, Republic Pictures, just a few miles from our house in the valley, my dad working as a writer. Our television early in the morning was filled with Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, Cisco Kid, the Lone Ranger. Afternoons, you'd come home and it was the Rifleman, Wanted Dead or Alive, Bonanza, Big Valley, Gunsmoke. These were all, and then my dad would make sure that I grew up watching all of the Westerns. Of course, we went to Disneyland and Frontier Village, and of course, we came to Arizona and we went to the Orm Ranch. And starting at the age of 5, that's where I learned to ride and experience the cowboy way of life. And I like to say my parents sent me east to find the West in Arizona. And so and that is the truth. Away from North Hollywood and the big urban environment of Los Angeles, where Californios and cowboying and vaqueros, the buckaroos and the Californio cowboys, never take away the fact that California is one of the homes, the place where the cowboy spirit of America was developed. I think that there's been a lot of research on that and where you can find the source. Where did the cowboy begin in America? But I digress a little bit because I was sent east to find the West in Arizona on the Quarter Circle V-Bar Ranch. And that's where I met real men and real women who were cowboys. And they helped build the West. And it's hard work. And I think when we talk about the icon of America, the American cowboy, Um, it's about hard work. It's about putting in the hours before the sun comes up and after the sun goes down to take care of your family, to work an honest day, and care for your animals. The cowboy, men, women, boys, and girls, they take on that responsibility with the values that built our country. And I think that that's one of those are the innate values that we talk about when we talk about the cowboy.
There was you say that particularly about the importance of the animals. I remember many years ago when I was teaching that we had a kid was kind of strange, but he was really a character, And he said to me one time, we were talking about how things affect our family. He said, well, my mom, she was really interested in that, and so she went back and really researched our family. And she said she was kind of shocked. It turns out that what would have been her great great grandfather was hanged for being a horse thief in Montana. And the point was that was a hanging offense. To take away a man's way of living or of even surviving, to steal a man's horse was to steal his life. And that was the story. He was hanged for horse thief. Yeah. Take care of the animals. Yeah.
That's right. I think that that's one of the big things that in today's modern America and across in any community where around the world where men and women are shepherds and ranchers and farmers, their dedication to the well-being of the animals they raise and the respect they have for their horses, for their cattle, and any other. And at the Orm Ranch, when my dad was growing up, they raised their own chickens, their own turkeys, their own hogs. They had their own remuda of horses. Of course, they had a very successful cow-calf operation. And in doing that, you also have to take care of the land. You have to steward the land. And so the cowboy, doesn't matter what age or what gender, those men and women who are taking care of the American landscape, they steward it because they do it because they have a passion for their life. It is their vocation. It is their responsibility. And they know that they're also helping feed America and the world through their hard work. And if anyone is out there who has just flies back and forth between the coasts, hasn't gotten in the car and driven across America, what they call the flyover states, and I lived in Iowa for 9 years, you need to get in the car, drive across this country, interstates and U.S. highways, small roads and back roads, a gain of appreciation for the men and women who have stuck themselves to the land, and they're doing it not just for themselves, because of their faith and their belief in what they do every day. And that's the cowboy way.
That's the cowboy way. Hey, thank you for reminding us. One of my favorite broadcasters was Earl Nightingale, and he always had a wonderful line that he said. He said, sometimes we don't need more educating, but we sure as blankety blank need reminding. And that's and right, that's true. I remember my writer daughter from New York City walked away, and she went into a small town and work. She could do some work in a cabin, so she could write. And all of a sudden, she began to go into town, and sit in the cafe and start to meet the small town people. Here he is, New York City gal, meeting the small town people. And she found it life-changing. And I said, how'd it go? And she said, Dad, those are good people. I said, those are good people. And I said, what else did you learn? She said, I think I'd like to have an F-150 squareback sometime. The pickup truck that came into the cafe, And so it was good for her to understand, being raised partly in Europe and obviously working in New York, to understand just exactly what you're saying. Hey, now please give us a little bit of a modern day things we need to remember about the cowboy ethos, and then close out by telling us more about how we can start to get in tune with the True West and the True West magazine experience. Okay?
Well, sure. I think right now the cowboy way is going through a new renaissance, not only in the United States, but around the world. And we've seen this pattern going back to, I credit Buffalo Bill's Wild West and Pawnee Bill's show with, we've had these waves of um, uh, the cowboy in popular culture, rises and falls. And over the decades, for well over 100 years, 125, 135 years, the world has fallen in love with the cowboy over and over again. And right now, between Yellowstone, 1883, 1923, Bass Reeves, with our streaming television, more and more people, not only in the United States, but around the world, are reimagining themselves as cowboys, are becoming more and more interested in the history. The history is becoming, there's a lot of filmmakers and producers mining chapters of the American West, difficult parts of that story, but bringing that story to more and more people. More and more people can see themselves in the cowboy way of life. And that, what one of the things that's doing is it's fueling the sale of the cowboy hats, boots, jeans, nightclubs and restaurants, television shows, music. More and more people are drawn to the values of the cowboy, but also the style of the cowboy. One of the great things about the American cowboy that is attractive to people is that the style is timeless, versus maybe showing up in Times Square dressed as Robin Hood. You can show up dressed as a cowboy and people aren't going to really look twice. It's and wearing cowboy boots and a hat and wearing the clothes is something that people love to do. And of course, in True West magazine, in our January-February 24 issue, we do a big photo. We have 3 photo essays. One is a photo essay of historic photographs of American cowboys and buckaroos. We've had some letters remind us that some of these men are buckaroos, vaqueros. And then we have, can you spot the dude? And so when you go back through the historic photography, just because you see a photograph of someone in a studio all dressed up as a cowboy, you can't always make a conclusion that that is a real cowboy. It may be dressed the part. And then we have a little bit of an homage, I would call a bouquet, to the working cowboys who became movie stars and television stars and brought the real cowboy way of life to the silver screen and television. People like Ben Johnson and Gene Autry and Tom Mix and Slim Pickens, and many more. These men took their real life experiences and brought that realism to the screen. And I'm always reminded when I think of Ben Johnson, who I got to meet, and Casey Tibbs, who also was in the movies and television. Both of them were in my father's film, Junior Bonner, which was filmed here in Prescott, Arizona. There's many people who would argue no one sat a saddle or rode a horse better than Ben Johnson, the only man ever to win an Academy Award for acting and a championship buckle in rodeo for roping. So I think that you pick up the January-February issue of True West, you're going to discover that we have uncovered and a great exhibition of photography that will take you to the True West and hopefully inspire yourself to find your own cowboy spirit.
Well, I would really encourage you to give a gift to yourself. And that is to make a point of getting that magazine. When I get the True West magazine, I'm kind of lost for a day. I lose a day's work sometimes because I am fascinated by the stories they tell. And so we have a lot more coming on What It Takes Radio, and one of those will be my friend Stuart here will be putting together a new classic podcast about the town. So tell us about what's coming about the town of the West.
Oh, you must be talking about our top 10 towns for 2024. And in our January-February issue this year, we named Cody, Wyoming as our #1 town in the American West. And I believe Cody, it probably could earn that ranking almost every year. And I think the one thing that we celebrate Cody for, it's its dedication to bringing the West to at all levels, to all visitors, 365 days a year, from the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, and its 5 museums, plus its archives. If you travel across the American West, there is not a museum center like it anywhere, and it rivals the Smithsonian. I really believe that it is on par with the Smithsonian. And if you come across, you're going to Yellowstone, you need to spend a long weekend in Cody or nearby. There are plenty of dude ranches, historic hotels like the Irma to stay in if you want that charming experience of staying in downtown Cody. Wonderful museums in addition to the Cody, like Old Trail Town, plus rodeo. Cody is one of the rodeo capitals of the West, and if you go to Wyoming, try to schedule time to be in Cody when you can go to one of their nighttime rodeos during the summer, or one of their big rodeo weeks. It's quite a town and a great place to spend time before or after you go to Yellowstone National Park, or if you've toured in Montana.
That's up north. Then go south to the other town, the one that we're going to do a podcast on.
Well, in Arizona, there are 2 great historic towns that people need to visit. One is Prescott, Arizona, the territorial capital, which is where I live, and it has some great museums and a wonderful downtown. Whiskey Row with the Palace and Mats, Charlotte Hall Museum, the Phippen Art Museum, the Indigenous Peoples Museum, and of course the Volunteer Welcome Center, the Western Heritage Center of Prescott. But as we have discovered, if you come to Prescott and you really want to understand frontier Arizona and the Earps and Doc Holliday, who made a stop for a short time period in Prescott, Doc a little longer than the Earps, you got to head south to the town too tough to die, Tombstone, Arizona, in Cochise County. And Tombstone, we are going to be launching a podcast this winter called The Tales of Old Tombstone. And we are going to dive deeply into the history of Tombstone, Cochise County, the territory of Arizona, and the development of the West. We are going to have writers, artists, town folk, promoters, business people. We're going to talk about Tombstone and what it was, what it is, and what it means to the rest of the West. Because Tombstone, in many ways, is a model, is something that you can look at and research and understand, celebrate, and examine while talking about its kith and kin across the West. It's the Deadwoods, the Dodge Cities, the other boom towns of the West, and answer questions. Why did the Earps only go to silver and gold towns and not go to copper boom towns. Bisbee, Morenci, Clifton. Why didn't they go there to gamble? They always went to silver and gold towns. They were looking for the fast money, fast women, and good times.
That's part of the story too. This has been great, and we're gonna do more of this, and obviously we're gonna be doing that podcast coming up, hopefully, and very shortly and we'll keep you informed about that. But as saying just about that, that it's all part of us. We have a gentleman in public relations who came down to help us from Phoenix, and he was working. He said, in terms of what we're talking about, he said, what you have to understand is deep inside of every man or woman in America is a little bit of the desire to be a cowboy. We all have a little inner cowboy in us. And then, to my surprise, one time when I was doing some research, because executives had talked to me about, kind of what they should wear, the classic book, Dress for Success, which is somewhat outdated now. But I was listening to the author one time, and the guy said at the end, well, is there any other thing that you would recommend for a real gentleman? And he said, yes. He says, if you are a real gentleman in America, no matter what you do, make sure that somewhere in your closet you have a pair of cowboy boots. You're not an American man if you don't own some cowboy boots. So we'll let it go at that. Hey, tell people how they can get their True West magazine or how they can find out more. Give us the web stage, and then if you have any final words, and then we'll say adios till next time.
Thank you, Stan. TrueWestMagazine.com, the first place I'd send anyone to look for a subscription button to get the magazine. You can go down to your local bookstore like Barnes & Noble or your grocery store and inquire if they sell it, and that's where you can pick it up in person. But the website, TrueWestMagazine.com, is the first place to stop in trying to start a subscription. I wanted to add one thing as we were talking about the Old West and the New West and pulling on your cowboy boots and putting on your hat. I think the American cowboy represents something of value of freedom. And Americans are restless by nature. And as you mentioned early on, in the Old West, you could be hanged for taking a man's horse. Because to a cowboy, his most valued possessions, his horse, his saddle, his boots and his hat, his sidearm, his weapons to protect himself, he could go anywhere. He had the freedom to pick up and move and start over. And freedom is the bottom line when it comes to being a cowboy. You have that freedom of choice and starting over and becoming who you want to be and do it with honor. That's the cowboy way.
That is the cowboy way. You've been listening to Interesting Ideas. My name is Stan Houston. I would be grateful if you'd reach out to us, and perhaps you have some questions, or perhaps you'd like to be like Stuart, be on the program yourself because you have some wit, some wisdom, insight, and truth you'd like to share, and perhaps you have a few good stories to tell. So reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com, and we're going to also help you get on the radio in 24. That's right. Be a cowboy and be on the radio. That will help you have more freedom. All the best and blessings to you at this Christmas holiday time, and look forward to a challenging 24, but you will truly be at your best in 24, and maybe it'll be your best year ever. So till that, all the best and bye for now.